Welcome back to the Buddhist Bookshelf YouTube channel. Today, we will resume our reading of the Sorrowless Flower, authored by Ngoc Tran, known as Dharma, name as Thien Phuc, and this is episode number 24. 323. It is easy to see the faults of others. For the majority of us, it is easy seeing others' faults, but hard indeed to see one's own faults. The Buddha taught that we should not evade self-responsibility for our own actions by blaming them on circumstances or unluckiness. Usually when a man is forced to see his own weakness, he avoids it and instead gives it to self-deceit. He will search his brain for an excuse, even the lamest one will do, to justify his actions. He may succeed in doing this. Sometimes he succeeds so well in trying to fool others, he even manages to fool himself with the very ghost created by his mind. However, you may fool some of the people for some of the time, but not all the people all the time. According to the Buddha, the fool who does not admit he is a fool is a real fool. And a fool who admits he is a fool is wise to that extent. If you have made a mistake, then admit it. You need courage. Of course, admission of your own mistake is not pleasant. You also need wisdom to see your own faults. Sincere Buddhists should not think that you have been unlucky or you have been a victim of fate. Face your shortcomings. You must realize that your mind has created the conditions which gave rise to the miseries and difficulties you are experiencing. This is the only way that can help lead you to a happy life. In the Dhammapada Sutta, the Buddha taught very clearly on easy to see the faults of others, but it is difficult to perceive our own faults. It is easy to see the faults of others, but it is difficult to perceive our own faults. A man winnows his neighbor's faults like chaff, but hides his own, as a dishonest gambler conceals a losing dice. Dharmapada 252. He who sees others' faults is easy to get irritable and increases afflictions. If we abandon such a habit, afflictions will also be gone. Dharmapada 253. Those who perceive wrong as wrong and what is right, such men, embracing right views and go to the blissful state. Dharmapada 319. 324. The path to the removal of sufferings. The essential steps of the path to the removal of suffering to Nibbana are pointed out by the Buddha. It is the way of careful cultivation of the mind, so as to produce unalloyed happiness and supreme rest from the turmoil of life. The path is indeed very difficult, but if we, with constant heedfulness and complete awareness, walk it watching our steps, we will one day reach our destination. The way of walking or the way of cultivation. People often walk without seeing the way. Religions generally lay importance on practice, that is, how to walk, but neglect teaching the intellectual activity with which to determine the right way, that is, how to see. In Mahayana Buddhism, this is the path on which one has directly realized emptiness. This also coincides with the first bodhisattva level, Bhumi. On this path, meditators completely remove the artificial conceptions of a permanent self. The Buddha stressed in his teachings the experimental process in Buddhist cultivation is a chain of objective observations before any practices, because through objective observations we realize the real face of sufferings and afflictions. It's this objective observation that gives us an opportunity to cultivate to totally destroy sufferings and afflictions. Thus, at any time, objective observation plays a key role in the experimental process in Buddhist cultivation. The first path is the path of overcoming anger. According to the Buddhist theory, in order to overcome anger, one must contemplate that a person or an animal which causes us to be angry today may have been our friend, relative, or even our father or mother in a certain previous life. The second path is the path of overcoming attachment. We should meditate or contemplate that a friend today may become an enemy tomorrow, and therefore, there is nothing for us to attach to. The third path is the path of overcoming attachment, overcoming demons. To overcome demons, e.g., as the Buddha did at his enlightenment. The fourth path is the path of overcoming doubts. To study scriptures, to read stories of enlightened ones, as well as to contemplate, will help us perceive the truth and overcome doubts. The fifth path is the path of renouncing wealth and sex. According to the sutra in 42 sections, chapter 22, the Buddha said, "People who cannot renounce wealth and sex are like small children who, not satisfied with one delicious helping, lick the honey off the blade of the knife, and in doing so, cut their tongues." The sixth path is the path of getting rid of deluded thoughts. One of the best methods to get rid of deluded thoughts is either meditation to obtain concentration or just keep one method, such as reciting the name of Amitabha Buddha. The seventh path is the path of not to slander any enlightening teachings. Should not slander any enlightening teachings. This is one of the 10 kinds of rules of behavior of great enlightening beings. Enlightening beings who abide by these can attain the supreme discipline of great knowledge. The eighth path is the path of not to look for faults in others. In daily life, always look above, look below, look to the east or to the west, to the north or to the south, and so on to try to find faults in others. Buddha taught that we should look into ourselves, we should reflect the light of awareness inwardly to become enlightened. The Buddha taught, when we do not see others' mistakes or see only our own rightness, we are naturally respected by seniors and admired by juniors. According to the Dharmapada, sentence 50, the Buddha taught, "Let not one look on the faults of others, nor things left done and undone by others, but one's own deeds done and undone." The ninth path is the path of examining ourselves. We, devoted Buddhists, must examine ourselves so that we are able to know who we are. Know our body and mind by simply watching. In sitting, in sleeping, in eating, know our limits. Use wisdom. The practice is not to try to achieve anything. Just be mindful of what is. Our whole meditation is to look directly at the mind. We will be able to see suffering, its cause, and its end. The 10th path is the path of controlling emotions. In Buddhism, controlling emotions does not mean a repression or suppression of emotions, but to recognize that they are destructive and harmful. If we let emotions simply come and go without checking them, we will have a tendency to prone to emotional outbursts. In the contrary, if we have a clear recognition of their destructive potential, we can get rid of them easily. The 11th path is the path of getting rid of desires. A Buddhist practitioner should be keenly anxious to get rid of desires and wants to persist in this. The 12th path is the path of eliminating of suffering. Suffering can be eliminated because suffering itself isn't the intrinsic nature of our minds. Since suffering arises from ignorance or misconception, once we realize emptiness or the nature of things as they are, ignorance or misconception no longer influences us. It's like turning a light on in a dark room. Once the light is on, the darkness vanishes. Similarly, wisdom can help us cleanse ignorance and disturbing attitudes from our minds forever. In addition, wisdom cleanses the karmic imprints currently on our minds, so they won't bring results. After perceiving the true picture of life, the Buddha said to himself, "I must get rid of the oppression of disease, old age and death." The 13th path is the path of eliminating perversions, eliminating deluded and confused. This means eliminating deceived in regard to reality. Delusion also implies a belief in something that is contrary to reality. Illusion, on the other hand, suggests that what is seen has objective reality, but is misinterpreted or seen falsely. In Buddhism, delusion is ignorance, an unawareness of the true nature of things or of the real meaning of existence. We are deluded or led astray by our senses, which include the intellect and its discriminating thoughts, insofar as they cause us to accept the phenomenal world as the whole of reality, when in fact it is but a limited and ephemeral aspect of reality. And to act as though the world is external to us when in truth it is but a reflection of ourselves. This does not say all phenomena are illusory. They mean that compared with mind itself, the world apprehended by the senses is such a partial and limited aspect of truth that it is dreamlike. When we fail to see the true nature of things, our views always become clouded. Because of our likes and dislikes, we fail to see the sense organs and sense objects objectively and in their proper perspective, and go after mirages, illusions and deceptions. The sense organs delude and mislead us, and then we fail to see things in their true light, as a result of which our way of seeing things becomes perverted. The delusion of mind mistakes the unreal for the real, the passing shadows for permanence, and the result is confusion, conflict, disharmony and perpetual sorrow. When we are caught up in these illusions, we perceive, think and view things incorrectly. We perceive permanence in the impermanence, pleasure in pain, self in what is not self, beauty in repulsive. We think and view in the same erroneous manner. We are perverted for 4 reasons: our own senses, unwise reflection, unsystematic attention, failure to see true nature of this world. The Buddha recommended us to utilize right understanding or insight to remove these illusions and help us recognize the real nature of all things. Once we really understand that all thing is subject to change in this world without any exception, we will surely want to rely on nothing. The 14th path is the path of eliminating of all hindrances and afflictions. By realizing for oneself with direct knowledge, one here and now enters upon and abides in the deliverance of mind and deliverance by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. The 15th path is the path of getting rid of covetousness. Getting rid of covetousness, anger, delusion, and fear, by taming their own minds, one of the 10 kinds of action of great enlightening beings. Enlightening beings who abide by these can achieve the action of Buddhas that has no coming or going. The 16th path is the path of getting rid of deluded thoughts. One of the best methods to get rid of deluded thoughts is either meditation to obtain concentration or just keep one method, such as reciting the name of Amitabha Buddha. The 17th path is the path of letting go. A basic teaching of the Buddha on how to calm and rein in the monkey mind. When we feel asleep, just lie down in a quiet place, put the lights out and let go our minds and bodies. In Buddhism, we have always been hearing about letting go and not clinging to anything. What does the Buddha mean on letting go? He means in daily activities, no way we can let go everything. We have to hold on things, however, try not to cling to them. For example, we try to make money for our living expenses, but not try to cling on making a lot of money to accumulate, regardless of the means of making the money. Practitioners do everything with a mind that lets go. Do not expect any praise or reward. If we let go a little, we will have a little peace. If we let go a lot, we will have a lot of peace. If we let go completely, we will know complete peace and freedom. 325. 10 non-seeking practices. The Buddha always reminds his disciples about 10 things that should be always memorized. First, we should not wish, yearn, that our bodies be always free of diseases, because a disease-free body is prone to desire and lust, because with a disease-free body, one tends to be tempted with desire and lust. This will lead to precept breaking and retrogression. We should not wish that our lives be free of all misfortune, adversity, or accident because without them, we will be easily prone to pride and arrogance. This will lead us to be disdainful and overbearing towards everyone else. If people's lives are perfect, everything is just as they always dreamed, without encountering heartaches, worries, afflictions, or any pains and sufferings, then this can easily give way to conceit, arrogance, etc., thus becoming the breeding ground for countless transgressions and offenses. Sincere Buddhists should always use misfortunes as the opportunity to awaken from being mesmerized by success, fame, fortune, wealth, etc., and realize the Buddha's teachings are true and accurate, and then use this realization to develop a cultivated mind-seeking enlightenment. Third, we should not wish that our mind cultivation be free of all obstacles because without obstacles, we would not have opportunities to excel our mind. This will lead to the transgression of thinking that we have awakened, when in fact we have not. Fourth, we should not wish that our cultivation be free of demonic obstacles, because our vows would not be then firm and enduring. This leads to the transgression of thinking that we have attained, when in fact we have not. Fifth, we should not wish that our plans and activities meet with easy success, for we will then be inclined to thoughts of contempt and disrespect. This leads to the transgression of pride and conceit, thinking ourselves to be filled with virtues and talent. Sixth, we should not wish for gain in our social relations. This will lead us to violate moral principles and see only mistakes of others. Seventh, We should not wish that everyone, at all times, be on good terms and in harmony with us. This leads to pride and conceit, and seeing only our own side of every issue. 8th, we should not wish to be repaid for our good deeds, lest we develop a calculating mind. This leads to greed for fame and fortune. 9th, we should not wish to share in opportunities for profit, lest the mind of illusion arise. This leads us to lose our good name and reputation for the sake of unwholesome gain. 10th, when subject to injustice and wrong, we should not necessarily seek the ability to refute and rebut, as doing so indicates that the mind of self and others has not been severed. This will certainly lead to more resentment and hatred. Thus, the Buddha advised all of us to consider. Turn suffering and disease into good medicine, consider diseases and sufferings as miraculous medicine. Turn misfortune and calamity into liberation, take misfortune and adversity as means of liberation. Turn obstacles or high stakes into freedom and ease, take obstacles as enjoyable ways to cultivate ourselves. Turn demons or haunting spirits into Dharma friends, take demonic obstacles as our good spiritual advisors. Turn trying events into peace and joy, consider difficulties as our joy of gaining experiences or life enjoyments. Turn bad friends into helpful associates, treat ungrateful people as our helpful aids. Turn opponents into fields of flowers, consider opponents as our good relationships. Treat ingratitude as worn-out shoes to be discarded, consider merits or services to others as ragged slippers. Turn frugality into power and wealth, take frugality as our honor. Turn injustice and wrong into conditions for progress along the way, consider injustice or false accusations as our virtuous gate to enlightenment. 326. Monastic Bodhisattvas. Great compassion is the life calling of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus, those who have developed the Bodhi mind, wishing to rescue and ferry other sentient beings across, should simply vow to be reborn in the triple realm, among the 5 turbidities and the 3 evil paths. If we abandon sentient beings to lead a selfish life of tranquility, we lack compassion. A preoccupation with egoistic needs contrary to the path of enlightenment. According to Masters Chi and Thien Phuc in the Pure Land Buddhism, there are 2 types of bodhisattvas. First, those who have followed the bodhisattva path for a long time and attained a tolerance of non-birth or insight into the non-origination of phenomena. These bodhisattvas can vow to be reborn in this evil realm to rescue sentient beings, without fear of being drowned in the sea of birth and death with sentient beings. The Perfection of Wisdom treatise states, take the case of the person who watches a relative drowning in the river. A person, more intelligent and resourceful, hurries off to fetch a boat and sails to rescue his relative. Thus both persons escape drowning. This is similar to the case of a bodhisattva who has attained tolerance of non-birth, has adequate skills and means to save sentient beings. Second, bodhisattvas who have not attained a tolerance of non-birth, as well as ordinary people who have just developed the Bodhi mind. If these bodhisattvas aspire to perfect the tolerance and enter the evil life of the triple realm to save sentient beings, they should always remain close to the Buddhas and good advisors. The Perfection of Wisdom treatise states, it is unwise for human beings who are still bound by all kinds of afflictions, even if they possess a great compassionate mind, to seek a premature rebirth in this evil realm to rescue sentient beings. Why is this so? It is because this evil, defiled world, afflictions are powerful and widespread. Those who lack the power of tolerance of non-birth are bound to be swayed by external circumstances. They then become slaves to form and sound, fame and fortune, with the resulting karma of greed, anger and delusion. Once this occurs, they cannot even save themselves. How can they save others? If, for example, they are born in the human realm, in this evil environment full of non-believers and externalists, it is difficult to encounter genuine sages. Therefore, it is not easy to hear the Buddha Dharma nor achieve the goals of the sages. Of those who planted the seeds of generosity, morality and blessings in previous lives and are thus now enjoying power and fame, how many are not infatuated with a life of wealth and honor, allowing an endless greed and lust? Therefore, even when they are counseled by enlightened teachers, they do not believe them nor act accordingly. Moreover, to satisfy their passions, they take advantage of their existing power and influence, creating a great deal of bad karma. Thus, when their present life comes to an end, they descend upon the three evil paths for countless eons. After that, they are reborn as humans of low social and economic status. If they do not then meet good spiritual advisors, they will continue to be deluded, creating more bad karma, and descending once again into the lower more realms. From time immemorial, sentient beings caught in the cycles of birth and death have been in this predicament. The Vimalakirti Sutra also states, if you cannot even cure your own illness, how can you cure the illnesses of others? The Perfection of Wisdom treatise further states, take the case of two persons, each of whom watches a relative drowning in the river. The first person, acting on impulse, hastily jumps into the water. However, because he lacks capabilities and the necessary means, in the end, both of them drown. Thus newly aspiring bodhisattvas are like the first individual, who still lacks the power of tolerance of non-birth, and cannot save sentient beings. The Perfection of Wisdom treatise further teaches, this is not unlike a young child, he should not leave his mother, lest he fall into a well, drown in the river or die of starvation, or a young bird whose wings are not fully developed. It must bide its time, hopping from branch to branch, until it can fly afar, leisurely and unimpeded. In the same manner, ordinary people who lack the tolerance of non-birth should limit themselves to Buddha recitation to achieve one-pointedness of mind. Once that goal is reached, at the time of death, they will certainly be reborn in the Pure Land. Having seen Amitabha Buddha and reached the tolerance of non-birth, they can steer the boat of that tolerance into the sea of birth and death, to ferry sentient beings across, and accomplish countless Buddha deeds at will. All monastic bodhisattva have four fearlessnesses. First, bodhisattva fearlessness arises from powers of memory and ability to preach without fear. Second, bodhisattva fearlessness arises from powers of moral diagnosis and application of the remedy. Third, bodhisattva fearlessness arises from powers of ratiocination. Fourth, bodhisattva fearlessness arises from powers of solving doubts. Besides, there are 5 advantages for those who attain the bodhisattvahood. Bodhisattva means an enlightened being, bodhi being, or a Buddha to be, or a being who desires to attain enlightenment, or a being who seeks enlightenment, including Buddhas, Pratyeka Buddhas, or any disciples of the Buddhas. According to Sarvastivadis, there are 5 advantages for those who attain the bodhisattvahood. First, they are not born in woeful states, but only among gods and men. Second, they are no more reborn in a poor or a low-class family. Third, they are, by virtue, a man and not a woman. Fourth, they are born in perfection free from physical defects. Fifth, they can remember the previous lives of their own and never forget them. 327. Bodhisattva Path. Bodhisattva Way is one of the 5 ways which teaches the observance of the 6 paramitas, the perfecting of the self and the benefits of others. The objective is the salvation of all beings and attaining of Buddhahood. The aim of bodhisattvas is the attainment of supreme Buddhahood. Therefore, Bodhisattva Way is also called the Buddha Way or Tathagata Way. This is the way in which practitioners seek to benefit self and benefit others, leading to Buddhahood or above to seek bodhi, below to transform all beings. According to the Flower Adornment Sutra, Chapter 38, there are 10 kinds of path of great enlightening beings. Enlightening beings who abide by these 10 paths can attain the path of unexcelled skill and means of all Buddhas. One path is the path of enlightening beings because they do not give up the sole determination for enlightenment. 2 paths are a path of enlightening beings because they develop wisdom and skill and means. 3 paths are a path of enlightening beings because they practice the following dharmas, so they are not attached to the 3 worlds: emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. 4 practices are a path of enlightening beings: ceaselessly removing the barriers of wrongdoing by repentance, ceaselessly rejoicing in virtue, ceaselessly honoring the enlightened and request them to teach, and skillfully practicing dedication ceaselessly. The 5 faculties are a path of enlightening beings. They rest on pure faith, steadfast and imperturbable, They generate great energy, finishing their tasks. They are single-minded in right collection, without wandering attention. They know the techniques for entering and emerging from concentration, and they are able to distinguish spheres of knowledge. The 6 psychic powers are a path of enlightening beings, for with celestial eye, they see all forms in all worlds, and know where sentient beings die and are born. With the celestial ear they hear all Buddha's teaching, absorb and remember their teachings, and expound them widely to sentient beings according to their faculties. With telepathic knowledge they are able to know the minds of others freely, without interference. With recollection of past life, they are able to remember all ages of the past and increase roots of goodness. With the power of psychic travel, they are able to appear variously to beings capable of being enlightened, to induce them to delight in truth. With knowledge of extinction of contamination they actually realize the ultimate truth, while carrying out the deeds of enlightening beings without ceases. 7 remembrances are a path of enlightening beings, for they remember Buddhas because they see infinite Buddhas in a single pore, opening the minds of all sentient beings. They remember the teaching because they do not leave the assemblies of all Buddhas. They personally receive the sublime teachings in the assemblies of all Buddhas and expound it to sentient beings according to their faculties, temperaments and inclinations, to enlighten them. They remember the harmonious community because they continually see enlightening beings in all worlds. They remember relinquishment because they know all enlightening beings' practices of relinquishment increase magnanimous generosity. They remember precepts because they do not give up the aspiration for enlightenment and dedicate all roots of goodness to sentient beings. They remember heaven because they always keep in mind the enlightening beings in the heaven of happiness, who are to become Buddhas in the next lifetime. And they remember sentient beings because they teach and tame them with wisdom and skill and means, reaching them all, without interruption. Following the Holy Eightfold Path to enlightenment is a path of enlightening beings, for they travel the path of right insight, getting rid of all false views. They exercise right thought, abandoning arbitrary conceptions. Their minds always follow universal knowledge. They always practice right speech, getting rid of faults of speech, and following the words of sages. They always cultivate right action, teaching sentient beings to make them peaceful and harmonious. They abide by right livelihood, being frugal in content, careful and correct in behavior, eating, dressing, sleeping, eliminating evil, and practicing good, all in accord with enlightenment, forever getting rid of all faults. They arouse right energy, diligently cultivating all difficult practices of enlightening beings, entering the 10 powers of Buddhas without hindrances. Their minds always recollect correctly, able to remember all messages, eliminating all mundane distraction, and their minds are always correctly concentrated. They enter the door of inconceivable liberation of enlightening beings, and in one concentration, they produce all concentrations. Entering the 9 successive concentrations is a path of enlightening beings, for they detach from craving and ill will, and expound the truth without inhibition in all they say. They extinguish thought and reflection, yet teach sentient beings with the thought and reflection of omniscience. They extinguish reflection, yet teach sentient beings with the reflection of omniscience. They give up joy and emotion, yet they are most joyful when they see all Buddhas. They give up worldly enjoyments and follow the transcendent enjoyment of the path of enlightening beings. They enter concentration in the realm of form, yet without abandoning life in the realm of desire. They are unshakable and enter formless concentration, yet without abandoning life in the realms of desire and form. Though they abide in concentration in which all perceptions are extinguished, they do not stop the activity of enlightening beings, and though they abide in concentration in which all sensations are extinguished, they do not stop the activity of enlightening beings. Learning the 10 powers is a path of enlightening beings because they possess the knowledge of what is so and what is not so, the knowledge of the causes and effects, deeds and consequences, past, future, and present, of all sentient beings, the knowledge of the differences in faculties of all sentient beings, and explaining the truth to them as is appropriate. The knowledge of infinite different natures of sentient beings, the knowledge of differences in weak, middling, and superior understanding of all sentient beings, and means of introducing them to truth, the knowledge of manifesting the appearance and conduct of Buddha throughout all worlds, all lands, all times, all ages, without abandoning the tactics of enlightening beings. The knowledge of all meditations, liberations, and concentrations, whether defiled or pure, timely or not, expediently producing door of liberation for enlightening beings, the knowledge of distinctions in all sentient beings, death in one place and birth in another in the various states of existence, the instantaneous knowledge of all ages in past, present and future, and the knowledge of extinction of all sentient beings' desires, compulsions, delusions, and habits, without abandoning the practices of enlightening beings. 328. Bodhisattva ruler of the world. According to the Vimalakirti Sutra, once Upasaka Vimalakirti was sick, the Buddha asked Bodhisattva ruler of the world to call on Vimalakirti to inquire his health. The Buddha then said to the Bodhisattva ruler of the world, "You call on Vimalakirti to inquire after his health on my behalf." Ruler of the world replied, "World-honored one, I am not qualified to call on him and inquire after his health. I still remember that once as I was staying in a vihara, a demon like Indra appeared followed by 12,000 goddesses, Devakanya, playing music and singing songs. After bowing their heads at my feet they brought their palms together and stood at my side. I mistook the demon for Sakra and said to him, 'Welcome, Sakra, although you have won merits, you should guard against passion, arising from music, song and sex. You should look into the 5 desires, for the objects of the 5 senses, in your practice of morality. You should look into the impermanence of body, life and wealth in your quest of indestructible Dharma, i.e. boundless body, endless life and inexhaustible spiritual wealth.' He said, 'Bodhisattva, please take these 12,000 goddesses who will serve you.' I replied, 'Sakra, please do not make to a monk this unclean offering which does not suit me.' Even before I had finished speaking, Vimalakirti came and said, 'He is not Sakra, he is a demon who comes to disturb you.' He then said to the demon, 'You can give me these girls and I will keep them.' The demon was frightened, and being afraid that Vimalakirti might give him trouble, he tried to make himself invisible but failed, and in spite of his use of supernatural powers he could not go away. Suddenly a voice was heard in the air, saying, 'Demon, give him the girls and then you can go.' Being scared, he gave the girls to Vimalakirti, who said to them, 'The demon has given you to me. You can now develop a mindset on the quest of supreme enlightenment.' Vimalakirti then expounded the Dharma to them, urging them to seek the truth. He declared, 'You have now set your minds on the quest for the truth and can experience joy in the Dharma instead of in the 5 worldly pleasures arising from the objects of the 5 senses.' They asked him, 'What is this joy in the Dharma?' He replied, 'Joy in having faith in the Buddha, joy in listening to the Dharma, joy in making offerings to the Sangha, and joy in forsaking the 5 worldly pleasures, joy in finding out that the 5 aggregates are like deadly enemies, that the 4 elements that make the body are like poisonous snakes, and that the sense organs and their objects are empty like space. Joy in following and upholding the truth, joy in being beneficial to living beings, joy in revering and making offerings to your masters, joy in spreading the practice of charity, dana, joy in firmly keeping the rules of discipline, sila, joy in forbearance, ksanti, joy in unflinching zeal, virya, to sow all excellent roots, joy in unperturbed serenity, dhyana. Joy in wiping out all defilement that screens clear wisdom, prajna, joy in expanding the enlightened bodhi, mind, joy in overcoming all demons, joy in eradicating all troubles, klesa, joy in purifying the Buddha land, joy in winning merits from excellent physical marks, joy in embellishing the Buddhimandala, the holy site, joy in fearlessness to hear and understand the profound Dharma, joy in the 3 perfect doors to nirvana, i.e. voidness, formlessness and inactivity, as contrasted with their incomplete counterparts, which still cling to the notion of objective realization. Joy of being with those studying the same Dharma and joy in the freedom from hindrance, when amongst those who do not study it, joy to guide and convert evil men, and to be with men of good counsel, joy in the state of purity and cleanness, joy in the practice of countless conditions contributory to enlightenment. All this is the bodhisattva joy in the Dharma. At that time, the demon said to the girls, "I want you all to return with me to our palace." The girls replied, "While we are here with the Venerable Upasaka, we delight in the joy of the Dharma, we no longer want the 5 kinds of worldly pleasures." The demon then said to Vimalakirti, "Will the Upasaka give away all these girls, as he who gives away everything to others is a bodhisattva?" Vimalakirti said, "I now give up all of them, and you can take them away, so that all living beings can fulfill their vows to realize the Dharma." The girls then asked Vimalakirti, "What should we do while staying at the demon's palace?" Vimalakirti replied, "Sisters, there is a Dharma called the inexhaustible lamp which you should study and practice. For instance, a lamp can be used to light up hundreds and thousands of other lamps. Darkness will thus be bright, and this brightness will be inexhaustible. So, sisters, a bodhisattva should guide and convert hundreds and thousands of living beings, so that they all develop the mindset on supreme enlightenment. Thus his deep thought of enlightening others is, likewise, inexhaustible. His expounding of the Dharma will then increase in all excellent Dharmas. This is called the inexhaustible lamp. Although you will be staying at the demon's palace, you should use this inexhaustible lamp to guide countless sons and daughters of devas to develop their mindset on supreme enlightenment, in order to repay your debt of gratitude to the Buddha, and also for the benefit of all living beings." The deva's daughters bowed their heads at Vimalakirti's feet and followed the demon to return to his palace, and all of a sudden they vanished. World-honored one, since Vimalakirti possesses such supernatural power, wisdom and eloquence, I am not qualified to call on him to inquire after his health. 329. Practices of Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattva practice. Bodhisattvas practicing, according to the tradition of Northern Buddhism. A bodhisattva must achieve the following bodhisattvas practices: to vow to devote the mind to Bodhi, Bodhicitta, to practice the 4 immeasurables, to practice the 6 paramitas, and to practice the 4 all-embracing virtues. According to the Vimalakirti Sutra, bodhisattvas are those who are well known for having achieved all the perfections that lead to the great wisdom. They had received instructions from many Buddhas and formed a Dharma-protecting citadel. By upholding the right Dharma, they could fearlessly give the lion's roar to teach sentient beings, so their names were heard in the 10 directions. They were not invited but came to the assembled to spread the teaching on the 3 treasures to transmit it in perpetuity. They had overcome all demons and defeated heresies, and their 6 faculties, karmas of deeds, words and thoughts were pure and clean, being free from the 5 hindrances and the 10 bonds. They had realized serenity of mind and had achieved unimpeded liberation. They had achieved right concentration and mental stability, thereby acquiring the uninterrupted power of speech. They had achieved all the 6 paramitas: charity, dana, discipline, sila, patience, ksanti, devotion, virya, serenity, dhyana, and wisdom, prajna, as well as the expedient method, abhaya, of teaching which completely benefits self and others. However, to them these realizations did not mean any gain whatsoever for themselves, so that they were in line with the patient endurance of the uncreate, anitpadika dharma ksanti. They were able to turn the wheel of the law that never turns back. Being able to interpret the underlying nature of phenomena, they knew very well the roots, propensities of all living beings. They surpassed them all and realized fearlessness. They had cultivated their minds by means of merits and wisdom, with which they embellished their physical features which were unsurpassable, thus giving up all earthly adornments. Their towering reputation exceeded the height of Mount Sumeru. Their profound faith in the uncreate was unbreakable like a diamond. Their treasures of the Dharma illuminated all lands and rained down nectar. Their speeches were profound and unsurpassable. They entered deep into all worldly causes, but cut off all heretical views, for they were already free from all dualities and had rooted out all previous habits. They were fearless and gave the lion's roar to proclaim the Dharma, their voices being like thunder. They could not be gauged, for they were beyond all measures. They had amassed all treasures of the Dharma and acted like skillful, seafaring pilots. They were well versed in the profound meanings of all dharmas. They knew very well the mental states of all living beings and their comings and goings within the realms of existence. They had reached the state near the unsurpassed sovereign wisdom of all Buddhas, having acquired the 10 fearless powers, Dasabala, giving complete knowledge in the 18 different characteristics of a Buddha, as compared with bodhisattvas, avanikadharma. Although they were free from rebirth and evil existences, they appeared in 5 mortal realms as royal physicians to cure all ailments, prescribing the right medicine in each individual case, thereby winning countless merits to embellish countless Buddha lands. Each living being derived great benefit from seeing and hearing them, for their deeds were not in vain. Thus they had achieved all excellent merits. According to the Flower Adornment Sutra, Chapter 21, 10 Practices, there are 10 kinds of practices, which are expounded by the Buddhas of past, present and future. The practice of giving joy, beneficial practice, practice of non-opposition, practice of indomitability, practice of non-confusion, practice of good manifestation, practice of non-attachment, practice of that which is difficult to attain, practice of good teachings, and practice of truth. According to the Lotus Sutra, there are 10 practices of respects of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. First, worship and respect all Buddhas. Second, praise the thus come ones. Third, make abundant offerings. Fourth, repent misdeeds and hindrances. Fifth, rejoice at others' merits and virtues. Sixth, request the Buddha to turn the Dharma wheel. Seventh, request the Buddha to remain in the world. Eighth, follow the teachings of the Buddha at all times. Ninth, accommodate and benefit all sentient beings. 10th, transfer merits and virtues universally. According to the Buddha in the Flower Adornment Sutra, Chapter 38, great enlightening beings have 10 kinds of practice which help them attain the practice of the unexcelled knowledge and wisdom of Buddhas. The first practice is the practice dealing with all sentient beings to develop them all to maturity. The second practice is the practice seeking all truths to learn them all. The third practice is the practice of all roots of goodness to cause them all to grow. The fourth practice is the practice of all concentration to be single-minded without distraction. The fifth practice is the practice of all knowledge to know everything. The sixth practice is the practice of all cultivations to be able to cultivate them all. The seventh practice is the practice dealing with all Buddha lands to adorn them all. The eighth practice is the practice dealing with all good companions, respecting and supporting them. The ninth practice is the practice dealing with all Buddhas, honoring and serving them. The 10th practice is the practice of all supernatural powers to be able to transform anywhere, anytime to help sentient beings. In the Surangama Sutra, the Buddha reminded Ananda about the 10 necessary activities or practices of a bodhisattva. The first practice is the conduct of happiness, the practice of joyful service or giving joy. The Buddha told Ananda, after these good men have become sons of the Buddha, they are replete with the limitlessly many wonderful virtues of the thus come ones, and they comply and accord with beings throughout the 10 directions. This is called the conduct of happiness. The second practice is the conduct of benefiting, the practice of beneficial service or beneficial practice. The Buddha told Ananda, being well able to accommodate all living beings is called the conduct of benefiting. The third practice is the conduct of non-opposition, the practice of never resenting or non-opposition. The Buddha told Ananda, enlightening oneself and enlightening others without putting forth any resistance is called the conduct of non-opposition. The fourth practice is the conduct of endlessness, the practice of indomitability or without limit in helping others. The Buddha told Ananda, to undergo birth in various forms continuously to the bounds of the future, equally throughout the 3 periods of time, and pervading the 10 directions is called the conduct of endlessness. The fifth practice is the conduct of freedom from deluded confusion, The practice of non-confusion. The Buddha told Ananda, when everything is equally in accord, one never makes mistakes among the various Dharma doors. This is called the conduct of freedom from deluded confusion. The sixth practice is the conduct of wholesome manifestation. The practice of good manifestation, or appearing in any form at will to save sentient beings. The Buddha told Ananda, then within what is identical, myriad differences appear, the characteristics of every difference are seen, one and all, in identity. This is called the conduct of wholesome manifestation. The seventh practice is the conduct of non-attachment. The practice of non-attachment, or unimpeded practice. The Buddha told Ananda, this continues until it includes all the dust motes that fill up empty space throughout the 10 directions. In each and every mote of dust there appear the worlds of the 10 directions. And yet the appearance of worlds do not interfere with one another. This is called the conduct of non-attachment. The eighth practice is the conduct of veneration. The practice of exalting the paramitas amongst all beings, or the practice of that which is difficult to attain. The Buddha told Ananda, everything that appears before one is the foremost paramita. This is called the conduct of veneration. The ninth practice is the conduct of wholesome Dharma. The practice of good teaching, or perfecting the Buddha law by complete virtue. The Buddha told Ananda, with such perfect fusion, one can model oneself after all the Buddhas of the 10 directions. This is called the conduct of wholesome Dharma. The 10th practice is the conduct of true actuality. The practice of truth, or manifest in all things the pure, final and true reality. The Buddha told Ananda, to then be pure and without outflows in each end. Every way is the primary truth, which is unconditioned, the essence of the nature. This is called the conduct of true actuality. 330. Vows of Bodhisattvas. According to the studies in the Lankavatara Sutra, written by Zen Master D.T. Suzuki, according to his transcendental insight into the truth of things, the Bodhisattva knows that it is beyond all eradicates, and not at all subject to any form of description, but is heart full of compassion and love for all beings who are unable to step out of the dualistic whirlpools of becoming or not becoming. He directs his vows towards their salvation and emancipation. His own heart is free from such attachments as are ordinarily cherished by the unemancipated, but that which feels persists, for his insight has not destroyed this, and hence his purvapranidhana, his upayakasalya, his nirmanakaya. Yet all that he does for the maturity of all beings in response to their needs is like the moon reflection in water, showing himself in all forms and appearances. He preaches to them on the Dharma. His activity is what is in Mahayana phraseology called anabhagakarya, deeds that are effortless, effectless, and purposeless. When the Bodhisattva enters upon the first stage called joy or pramudita, in the career of his spiritual discipline, he makes the following solemn vows, 10 in number, which, flowing out of his most earnest determined will, are as all-inclusive as the whole universe, extending to the extremity of space itself, reaching the end of time, exhausting all the number of kalpas or ages, and functioning uninterruptedly as long as there is the appearance of a Buddha. The first vow is to honor and serve all the Buddhas, one and all without a single exception. The second vow is to work for the preservation and perpetuation of the teaching of all the Buddhas. The third vow is to be present at the appearance of each Buddha, wherever and whenever it may be. The fourth vow is to practice the proper conduct of bodhisattvahood, which is wide and measureless, imperishable and free from impurities, and to extend the virtues of perfection, paramitas, towards all beings. The fifth vow is to induce all beings in the most comprehensive sense of the term, to turn to the teaching of the Buddhas, so that they may find their final abode of peace, in the wisdom of the all-wise ones. The sixth vow is to have an inner perception of the universe, wide and inexhaustible, in all its possible multitudinousness. The seventh vow is to realize the most closely interpenetrating relationship of each and all, of all and each, and to make every land of beings immaculate as a Buddha land. The eighth vow is to be united with all the bodhisattvas in oneness of intention, to become intimately acquainted with the dignity, understanding, and psychic condition of the Tathagatas, so that the Bodhisattva can enter any society of beings and accomplish the Mahayana, which is beyond thought. The ninth vow is to evolve the never-receding wheel, whereby to carry out his work of universal salvation, by making himself like unto the great Lord of Medicine or wish-fulfilling gem. The 10th vow is to realize the great supreme enlightenment in all the worlds, by going through the stages of Buddhahood and fulfilling the wishes of all beings with one voice, and while showing himself to be in nirvana, not to cease from practicing the objects of bodhisattvahood. 331. Powers of Bodhisattvas. In Mahayana Buddhism, it is the 8th perfection, paramita, of the 10-fold list of perfections that a bodhisattva cultivates on the path to Buddhahood. It is developed on the 8th bodhisattva level, bhumi. Besides, there is also a 10-fold list of qualities that in both Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana are said to be unique to fully awakened Buddhas, Samyak Sambuddha. 1. Power of knowledge of what is possible and what is impossible, or the power to distinguish right from wrong, Stenasthana Jnana Bala. Power of knowledge of retributions of actions, or the power of knowing karmic retributions throughout the 3 periods of time, Karma Vipaka Jnana Bala. 3. Power of knowledge of the concentrations, 8 stages of liberations, meditative absorptions, and attainments, Dhyana Vimoksha Samadhi Samapatti Jnana Bala.